West. Nevada Energy is the proponent here, so goals would be to construct, operate, and maintain a proposed system of new 545. Is this the start of it over here, Dan?
Yeah, but that information is on.
Okay. So construct, operate, maintain a proposed system of new 525s. Those are the big transmission lines. 345s are big, 230s are big, 120s are also big transmission lines. So to provide reliable electric service to deliver the projected electricity demand in Nevada and to improve the overall electric transmission system reliability by providing a critical statewide transmission connection, okay? And then to provide sufficient levels of redundancy to maintain reliable operation and grid reliability in the event of a loss or outage on the system, and to provide a reliable statewide interconnected transmission grid to help achieve the Nevada State Goal, Renewable Energy Portfolio Goal, and greenhouse gas emissions. So there's Nevada Energy's goals. That poster board here is the preliminary EIS proposed, proposed purpose and need. Preliminary meaning that it's just the administrative draft version. So the notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement was published in the Federal Register on May 2nd. So that was in the Federal Register. The BLM is the lead federal agency. The BIA, or Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the National Park Service are cooperating agencies who each will have decisions to be made based on the federal regulations and policies that they have. Each of these three federal agencies will have their own versions of purpose and need, or their own agency versions of purpose and need, which we have displayed on those boards over there. In addition to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and National Park Service, there are 37 other federal, state, local agencies and tribes that are also in a cooperating agency status. So we've reached out to quite a few folks. Project location and land ownership. Looking for the slide deck, it would be number 3 over there. We're going to go through Clark, Nye, Esmeralda, Mineral, Lyon, Story, and Washoe counties. We've got approximately 469 miles of new transmission and associated substations that we'll be working with. The right-of-way will include approximately 13,600 acres, approximately, and Nevada Division of State Lands in addition to private lands. We're looking to create a right-of-way of 200 feet for the 525 kV line and 160 feet for the 345s. So that would be, if you imagine the center line, that would be like 100 feet on each side would be technically the right-of-way, so that they could do maintenance and such on that transmission line as needed, if approved. The ancillary project features are going to be an expansion to the Harry Allen switching station, the Northwest Miraloma and Comstock Meadow switching station. So here and then up in Reno. New substations would be Amargosa, Esmeralda, and the Fort Churchill substation, which is Urington. Access roads, of course, will be existing roads, and there may be some new roads. Fiber optic cable communication lines, and then the new microwave radio facilities, because that's redundancy. With high power transmission, you need redundancy on your communication lines. That's a requirement. So construction schedule is what I'm up to. It's planned to be in service by December of 2026. That's Nevada Energy's date that they would like to have the power line in service. It would be December of 2026, and construction period would be approximately 3 years. So back that up, that's December of 2023 that they would be looking to have all their permits in and ready to go, and if they were permitted to, if it was a favorable decision. So for them. So transmission line route group alternatives, we have quite a few. That's one of these posters. over there? Oh, it's that one right there, isn't it? Okay, so we have route, there are 8 transmission line route alternatives. We call one low-C, and that's down here in southern Nevada. We also have what we call a Tusk alternative. And then moving into Nye County, we have a Beatty alternative and another alternative in that area. We have an alternative in the Scotty Junction area. Then in Mineral County near Walker Lake, we have what we're going to call the Walker Lake alternative. In Lyon County, we have a Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area and Carson River alternative. And at the Fort Churchill to Harry Allen alternative also exists. So let's start with the low-C transmission line alternative. Sometimes I gotta wear glasses, sometimes I don't. So this is the low-C. This is a diagram of the low-C alternative. You can see that we would come across this way, then go up, or go up and then go over. So there's 2 different paths on that alternative. Then if you get to the Tusk alternative, there are 4 alternatives in this range. So everything from into Tusk to just about 5 feet into Tusk. So there's a range of different alternatives for Tusk or Tule Springs. There's also some alternatives that have been considered that wouldn't likely be carried forward for one reason or another. So those could be also alternatives in that group. Some of those that were mentioned here, like underground 525, adding to existing power poles, adding the power line to existing power poles, because they would go way too high. We've got the FAA issues, a bunch of other stuff. Going on the Clark County route of 215 has been brought up. Placed in the 525 in an electricity corridor that was stated. This comes up a lot. So there was legislation that was provided in for Tule Springs that we're supposed to have a corridor for the transmission line. That corridor was never created. When our cadastral group created Tusk, they created Tusk in tight to the existing corridor, but we didn't get the extra 140 feet that was supposed to be there. So that's why there is no room when you come into the start of Tusk and you come out the other side of Tusk, there is no actual corridor there. That's why we're working with the Park Service with them on the Tusk, what we call the Tusk alternative. So that would be that. And then the South Las Vegas corridor is going all the way south. No way really to get past Rainbow Gardens, as probably many of you know from this area. And then go south and around up through Boulder City and then up the back way past Pahrump and up the back way into Amargosa. That was also an alternative that was considered but likely not to be carried forward. So, skip ahead on some pages here. Okay, here's where we are. So the Beatty corridor, which is right here, as you can see, or a range of alternatives. There are quite a few of them. There's the ones that come up through these way. These are all preliminary alternatives, folks. So if you have a scoping comment about a better alternative, please come forward during the scoping comment period. So the main version that was submitted by Nevada Energy is the orange line. And then we came up with an alternative on the blue. We came up with an alternative on the green based on some workshops that we had. And we also had a brown version in here. So that's all in this area. Then we also have an alternative here in orange. And then we had a couple of alternatives that were considered coming through the backside on the other side of Beatty, between Beatty and Death Valley, but that one isn't as popular and may not be carried forward from analysis. So we'll move forward on our presentation here. I'm probably killing Diane because I'm not following her exact protocol here. The Scotty Junction transmission line, where's Scotty Junction? It's probably standing right in front of me. Yeah, I am. So the Scotty Junction alternative route group includes two alternatives, 11 miles south of Scotty along the US 95, extending approximately 1 to 4 miles north of Scotty. You can see it on the map here. Proposed action for these alternatives would run parallel to the 95. The Scotty Junction transmission alternative 8 would stay on the south side of the 95, and Alt B would run parallel to the 95 south side in an existing transmission line corridor. So we've got this version. This version is the original here, and then there's another version right there that goes through a corridor. And that corridor is known as the West White Energy Corridor. And we got some Walker Lake River transmission line alternatives that we've been considering that have developed from our workshops. So let's see here, Walker River. Oh, here, good. Got to put my glasses on. Getting older. The Walker River transmission line group includes one alternative, and that's going around this way. I'm sorry, I probably can't, folks over there probably can't see, so I'll move further this way, but it would be to drop down this way and come along this way and then come up a corridor over here, instead of following an existing transmission line and coming across. So that would be an alternative for the Walker River area. And then the Mason Valley area is right here. We've got a bunch of different, these are where the red is the 545 coming in, and then it gets to what we call the Churchill substation. And then the other reds are 345s. So we could have an alternative that comes up through here, over here, as represented in the blue or the purple. We could come up further and then come across, but that could impact the tribe there, or we could follow the railroad and the existing transmission and come into the Fort Churchill, which is this big blue line, and then the 345s come out of there. And then we work our way to the Carson River alternatives that we've developed in the workshops. And these are, again, 345s. This is where you change the line from a 545 to a 345. So there's two 345s that go up to the substation here. So you're creating a loop, redundancy in a loop. And then you have one 345 that goes off to the Mira Loma substation. So these are all 345s traveling through this area. We have an alternative going to the one substation through Green here, so that we're avoiding some private land in here potentially. So that's a alternative that came up through some of the workshops. Gotta flip pages. Getting probably ahead of myself here. Where are we on? Oh, we got substation alternatives. Yeah, I'm not too far off. So we have some substation alternatives also. I mentioned before that there's new substations in this project. So Amargosa, Northwest, and Harry Allen would be upgrades. Amargosa has alternatives here. So you're looking at right where the transmission line would turn before it gets to Beatty. That would be one alternative for a substation. The other substation is about 7.5 miles to the south of that location. So that would be another potential substation. It's about 7 miles from the Amargosa solar energy zone, so it's really close. The Esmeralda substation has three, one to the far north, one to the south, and one in the middle. So those are the three potential substations. This is a blow up of those potential substations right there. And then we have Comstock. These would be upgrades, and Fort Churchill would be a giant upgrade to that substation, just be a big substation, and it's on private land. So that's good. And then let's talk about potential resource management plan amendments. So this EIS is what we call a plan amendment version EIS. So it's the highest version of an EIS that you can go. So that a plan or a resource management plan produces how the land is to be used in our multi-use agency. So we have everything from mining to recreation to areas of environmental critical concern to all energy corridors to everything. So we're going to amend the plans. There will be, let's see, it's quite a few. There are 6 applicable RFPs ranging from approval dates of, believe it or not, 1977 to 2016. So mainly we're looking at the west-wide energy corridors as amending those, because those are meant for energy transmission, and they are some of the corridors are in areas where no other transmission is. So it makes sense to move them over to where transmission currently is. There's going to be some visual amendments because we go through some visual class 2 and 3. So we typically corridors are VRM 4, which means is the lowest rating for visual on the scale of 1. 1 would be like the Grand Canyon. 4 would be something that you would see some infrastructure at these areas. So the Tonopah Resource Management Plan is 1. The Las Vegas plan is number 2. The Carson City plan is 3. The Nevada-California Greater Sage Grouse is a plan that we could look at. The Spotted Range Communication Site Plan, that's the military's version, and the Approved Resource Management Plan Decision of the Energy Corridors, which is WEC. So we have them listed here. So if you need to know all those plans, we give us a contact and we'll get those to you. So we're up to milestones. So we got slides down this way. Let's see this one. This one? Okay. So EIS and RAD milestones. We're here. We're in the circle where it says we're here with 30-day public decision comment. So we've got all this to go through before we get to a record of decision. So this is scoping. This is where we're gathering public comments about the project. Those will go into the document. They could or could not create a range of alternatives for us. So we're going through that right now. Like I said, we've been out for a year already on this project with workshops, so hopefully you all are really familiar with the project that I'm presenting to you today. The National Historic Preservation Act is this slide, and we're currently at this step in the slide. So we're using our regulations for the 106 process, and then Tim is here right over there, and he's an expert in this field. So if anyone of you have questions on the 106 process, I would ask that you talk to Tim on any cultural issues that you may have that come up on that. So that would be good. So that's that'd be 36 CFR 800.8C. Is that correct, Tim? Okay. Thank you very much. So we're obviously into field survey resource investigations. On biology, we're looking at desert tortoise. We've done bald eagle surveys, and we're completing other surveys for sensitive species along the way. We've got our cultural resources out there with the class 1 done. We're in doing class 3 surveys. That's just the type of survey that's done for cultural. The National Historic Trail, we're working on trails, any trails that we cross, we're working on the trails portion. And the visual resources, like I mentioned, we're working on visual resources with simulations of what those areas look like if a transmission line were to be in that area. So that'd be the visual resource portion of the project. And then we've got the action. The BLM is the lead agency again. The BIA and the NPS are cooperating agencies. That poster board depicts that information there. So, you're welcome to take a look at all of these poster boards and ask us questions. Of course, we'll be here I tried to catch us back up on time, so I moved a little fast there. Overall, the project's just starting. We're looking to complete the project sometime in maybe September-ish of next year. So we're working through the NEPA. The first will be the drafted environmental impact statement, and after what we call the DEIS, then comes an FEIS, and after an FEIS, you get to a record of decision. The authorized officer on this project is the state director, John Hiatt. So he is the one who is the authorized officer to make the decision on this project, since this project is being run from the state office. So we're to the point now where we can take public comments from anyone who would like to provide comments. We've already gone over that with the timer, and Diane's got something here that she'd like to say.
Does anybody who didn't sign up to speak, would you like to speak now? I have some blank ones.
Can we just ask some general questions? Like, is this an AC or DC line?
This is an AC line. It's kilovolts.
Where are the visual classes in the southern Nevada area being amended? Ballpark figure?
I don't know where the visual.
That should be on a map.
Okay, can you put that on a comment and send it to us, please?
Yeah. And Battle Mountain, we really need to know that.
Yeah. So this is a AC line. DCs are like Trans West, coming out of I think Wyoming or Montana down this way, but this is an AC 545 kV. And then Kevin had a question. I asked him to put it on a comment card about where the VRM is that we would be. So where the VRM classes are, I don't know where all of the VRM classes are.
The class 2 is around Walker Lake on the east side. There's just a little bit that goes along the shoreline, and we are right in the very corner of it.
Okay, what about the southern Nevada area?
There's no class 2 there that we're impacting, according to their current VRM. That's visual resource management class.
Yeah, so we'll prepare something that shows where the visual resource management class is, so, and talk about any potential amending of those classes for the corridors. But typically corridors for electrical or gas or water lines, anything linear that you can think of would run through a corridor. And corridors are typically always, no matter where they run through, VRM4.
Does anybody else have any cards?
I have a question. General question?
Yeah, I'll take a general question, go ahead.
So the Federal Highway Administration, when they designate interstate corridors, say that those are multimodal corridors. They are not only for highways, they're for rail, they're for communications, and they're for electric power. How does this conform to the I-11 corridor?
The I-11 corridor, we don't know much about. I don't know much about it. There hasn't been an application. There's been talk about it. There's been some public meetings about the I-11 corridor. They have a big problem trying to go right through Las Vegas. So I don't know much about the I-11 corridor. I understand what you're saying about those, but I really am not involved in the I-11. David Pritchard at our state office would have the most information. He's our P&EC. So if you'd like to contact David, if you'd like to contact me, I can get you to David Pritchett, and David Pritchett can give you the latest information on the I-11 corridor, but I have not heard anything even about that in 6 to 8 months. It's like some kind of freeway that goes from Phoenix to Seattle.
Okay, so the freeway is basically the Mexican border, north theoretically in Canada. So
Okay.
it goes Highway 90,
3, 5?
93
Uh-huh.
up through Arizona.
Uh-huh.
And it comes across the bridge there just below Hoover Dam.
As
And
one
it
of its
comes-
alternatives,
It
yeah.
comes into the Las Vegas Valley.
Mhm.
And then there's some debate about which freeway it will take through the Las Vegas Valley, whether it will take I-15 to 215 or just go 215 all the way around. That's yet to be decided. But then it's supposed to go from the Las Vegas Valley up to Reno. So-
I also saw a version where it went right along Lake Mead.
And that's pretty much been abandoned, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not an application for that project, so it's all hearsay where they're gonna go until they turn in what we call the plan of development to really define their route. You know, we're guessing what they may or may not do, right? So we've all heard about it. It comes up in questions, but I really don't have any information on it at all.
What's the size of these towers compared to the ones down by Floyd Lamb Park, those big ones that you see down there at the north
I
end?
don't know what Floyd Lamb Park, are they 230s?
They're by, you're talking about north of Floyd Lamb Park?
Yeah, about 4 miles north of
So
Floyd
there are
Lamb.
different towers there. It does have some 500 kV. I don't know, Kip, do you know the Harry Allen Northwest 500 kV towers, the highest towers? What is the height of those towers?
Those are the mile poles, those are about 110, 120 feet tall.
So-
120 feet. So those are about 120 feet.
Oh,
tall.
okay.
Yeah, and 545s can lead from
180.
up to 180 all the way down to 90, 100 or so. So there's a range that they can raise or lower depending upon the visual impact. The higher you go, likely the better, because then you don't have potential chances of magnetic fields interfering with stuff or ground attractions or anything like that. Anything over 200 feet, you have to go to the FAA. And then you get blinky lights and you get towers painted orange and white, and they just look really.
Great, it takes more on topography, though.
Yeah, it's topography too, right, thank you, Lee. Any public comments that you'd like to come up and introduce yourself to the court reporter and make a, oh, you have 8?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic, I will let you take over.
Kevin, you're first. So if you'll come up and state your name and spell your last name for Heidi, and then I'll, when you're ready, I will turn on the timer and you'll be able to see it, so.
Okay, I'll try to look at the timer, or maybe not. My name's Kevin Emmerich, it's spelled E-M-M-E-R-I-C-H. I actually represent a group called Basin and Rangewood. Some interesting things about this particular project here. I actually live up in Beatty, Nevada. I just want to tell you what's going on there. It's a good place for the surveyors to stay. And they're going in after hours, in the hotels. They're talking to local people, and they're talking about a huge amount of archaeology they're finding. And I'm not going to give the exact location of that. I don't like to do that. But, I mean, one of the guys said he's going to lay in front of the bulldozer. And I'm not making this up. I live up there. And I'm just wondering how that can be resolved, because nobody thinks that it can be moved anywhere where there's not going to be that conflict. And you all should know that, because they're not going to just resolve this. The other thing is, you've got an alternative that goes over right near the Bailey Hot Springs. And it's not only near where people live, but the Timbisha Shoshone consider that a cultural landscape. You guys are not talking to people, and if you are, you're not telling us you're talking to those people. The other thing that you're doing is you're amending a lot of plans. You're going to amend that sage grouse plan. You amended a plan in 2014, Southern Nevada Resource Plan over desert tortoise connectivity. And with that amendment, you created an area of critical environmental concern. And you could do that for bi-state sage-grouse. This project's gonna impact a lot of communities. It's gonna impact a lot of viewscapes. It could cause a wildfire. Why not use these plan amendments to return something to the environment? They just told me it's not a green energy line. It's gonna hook up to natural gas plants too. It's an all of the above line. It's not going to be a clean line. So I'm gonna run out of time no, I think I have a little bit more time here. So yes, you can amend the plan, you can amend the resource plan, and you, another thing is that you've got ranch alternatives up by Beatty, and you just crossed out 7J Ranch. I believe you're gonna try to move the corridor away from there for environmental reasons. The company Next Era Energy has come up to Beatty, and they want a project just south of that area. And they're sending up a lawyer represented by Haaland and Hart, who's deliberately getting into the local politics and turning people against each other. This is not a welcome project in Beatty. This is a colonialist project. It's going to take a lot of the viewscape away. It's going to result in connected actions that will result in huge solar projects. There's other power lines up there too. It's going to impact the local economy, and I don't see anything being offered. For the properties that's gonna go near, you haven't even talked to the landowners. You tried to reach out to one and they didn't even respond. I'm sorry, this is pathetic.
Woo! Pathetic.
Okay, Laura Cunningham? Yes, yeah, she's gonna wipe down this. So Laura, if you would address the court reporter and tell her your name and spell your last name.
Laura Cunningham, Cunningham. So my comment is three things. This is going to be what, a $2 billion transmission line? I'm guessing, looking at the cost of other transmission lines, that's going to be rate-based. So all of our NV Energy customer bills will be raised to build this transmission line. Our rates are going to go up. Number two, this transmission line is based in natural gas. GreenLink is a euphemism. It's just going to power all, it's not going to help climate change at all. It's going to power all these big Silicon Valley high-tech Reno Sparks factories, and then it will open up the heart of beautiful outback of Nevada, full of pronghorn, wildflowers, desert tortoise, Joshua trees, to solar energy development. And it just crushes me. I mean, I'm probably gonna move out of Nevada. Lastly, number three, we don't appreciate a lot of large environmental groups going behind the scenes and talking with BLM in closed room, back room, smoke-filled room meetings without the public and small grassroots groups. Thank you.
Woo!
Next speaker is Judy Bundorf. Is that correctly?
Judy Bundorf.
Judy Bundorf, B-U-N-D-O-R-F.
Basically, I'm wondering why every parking lot and every commercial rooftop in southern Nevada and Reno does not have solar panels. I've seen what's happened to El Dorado Valley, Ivanpah Valley. They're disaster zones. The dust storms are beyond comprehension. And the whole state of Nevada will be a dust bowl if that power line goes through and the 230 square miles of solar projects that are planned along that line are built. And yet, look what's happening in California. Not only do they have massive wildfires caused by power lines, they also, just in the last week, I've read that Governor Newsom has decided, well, gee, maybe we shouldn't shut down Diablo Canyon nuclear plant because they know wind and solar can't power the state. Likewise, they're retooling a bunch of their natural gas plants. Why? So the lights will stay on. And where will the battery power come from? We'll have to bulldoze the rest of the state that isn't used for solar for lithium. And I've lived in Nevada since 1962. It's nice to have some places that aren't industrially developed. And again, I've been a Nevada power customer since then, and the rates are going up anyway. We cannot possibly afford to shove that off on all the ratepayers. Thank you.
Woo!
The next speaker is Heather Gang.
I'm Heather Gang, G-A-N-G. There are so many special places in the path of this proposed transmission line, and I'd just like to mention a couple of them that are the most special to me and I don't think have been getting a lot of attention. A short side trip off of Highway 95 south of Beatty takes you to a beautiful valley, still mostly unmarred by human presence, Crater Flat. In my opinion, this valley should be preserved as a geologic landmark. It is geologically unique. I think we should protect geologic resources in general, not just paleontological resources. On the west side of Crater Flat, bare mountains, hundreds of millions years worth of strata are tilting up to the sky, multicolored strata. On the east side, the dramatic escarpment of Yucca Mountain is exposing the history of violent pyroclastic flows and ash falls. And in the middle, there's a series of basalt cinder cones of various ages and various states of erosion. And at the south end is Busted Butte, which has a beautiful, prominent, normal fault exposed in it. This transmission line is proposed to cut right through that special valley. And the line is proposed to run along the east side of Walker Lake. This is perhaps the most egregious destruction of viewscape. Who can resist stopping at Walker Lake to look at the unspoiled view of the water and desert? This is such an important area for birds too. And then the path of destruction crosses the Wassuck Range toward the East Walker River. The A alternative, or it was also called Orange M in one of the things I looked at, runs right along the East Walker River next to the newly created state recreation area. No, just no. The transmission line would then run up the eastern side of the farming communities in Mason Valley and north of the Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area, another important area for birds. North of Mason Valley, it follows the railroad tracks into Adrian Valley, a tributary of the Carson River with beautiful stands of cottonwood, far from the noise and lights of Highway 95A. Special place indeed. Lines are proposed crossing and paralleling the Carson River through the backcountry where it's far from the highway. This is a popular recreational route between Dayton and Fort Churchill, along the river, along the dirt roads. What is the reason for this transmission line? It enables the monopolization of energy by NV Energy. Due to Federal Energy Regulatory Commission legislation, the utility companies make more money by spending more money on transmission infrastructure. This power line will enable the wholesale destruction of 200, I think as Judy said, 230 square miles of undisturbed desert ecosystem. Last time I looked at Google Earth, only a small portion of the Tesla factory's rooftop was covered with solar panels. The industrial park comprises almost 4,000 acres of rooftops, parking lots, and disturbed area. Until they cover their own area with solar panels, don't tear up 1 acre of pristine desert.
Woo! So good.
The next speaker is Shannon Sultan. Okay. Take your time. just don't want you to trip.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Shannon Sultan, S-A-L-T-E-R. Hi there, my name is Shannon Sultan. I'm representing a group called Mojave Green. And right now we are holding a camp outside the Yellow Pine Solar Facility in the South Pahrump Valley. And what you see here pictured in this photograph is the 3,000 acre site of Yellow Pine Solar before it was bulldozed. So this site is, you can see all of the greenery. People think of the deserts as being empty, but they're anything from empty. On this site alone, NextEra Energy is bulldozing 92,000 Mojave yucca that are hundreds, if not 1,000 years old. They are bulldozing close to 1 million or more, probably more creosote, which are actually the oldest living things on Earth. The creosote root systems can be as old as 11,000 years. And what I've seen in this valley is truly a form of ecocide. I believe it's a form of terror, and I believe it's absolutely unnecessary. So I've been doing some research into the parking lots that we have in the United States. And a very conservative estimate is that the United States has 2.5 million acres of parking lots. Today in Las Vegas, I've been parked in 4 different parking lots, including the parking lot here at Centennial Hills High School. And you know, as most of you probably know, our parking lots in Southern Nevada are pretty much wastelands. There's practically no shade, and they're really bad to be in. So if we build solar shade canopies over even half of the parking lots in the United States, that would be more than enough acres to produce the energy that they're talking about with this and other projects. Now, in honor of the non-human world that doesn't have a voice, I'm gonna spend the remaining minute that I have in silence. Thank you. Woo!
The next speaker is Jana. There you are. I didn't know where you went. I thought you were over here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Could you spell your last name for the
Sure. My name is Jana Moan. That's Jaina Moan. And I am the External Affairs Director for the Nature Conservancy in Nevada. We just have a few comments. We appreciate the BLM's efforts to engage with interested parties, such as TNC early in the process. TNC has 3 focus areas: resilient lands, resilient waters, and climate change. And we recognize that a primary purpose of the GreenLink West project is to facilitate a transition to carbon-free clean energy, which has positive outcomes for the climate. It's important that the rush to decarbonize the energy sector does not come at the expense of Nevada's lands, waters, or biodiversity.
Let me just speak up
Toward you.
a little bit. Slow down a little bit. You're really fast.
TNC strongly supports a smart from the start approach to energy and infrastructure planning. This approach involves siting projects such as GreenLink West in areas where it will not compromise conservation values. For example, placing the line along existing roadways and transmission lines minimizes new impacts. We strongly encourage the BLM and NV Energy to pursue an alternative that has all route segments directly paralleling existing linear disturbances. We have three concerns, overarching concerns. First is habitat fragmentation. The preferred alternative should not increase habitat fragmentation. This can be avoided by co-locating the line along Highway 95 and existing power lines and minimizing the project's disturbance footprint. Secondly, disruption of migratory bird flyways. The line crosses or is adjacent to several locations that are critical to the survival of migratory birds. This project should avoid impacting critical migration corridors and be designed to avoid predation and other sources of avian mortality. And then finally, displacement. The preferred alternative should avoid displacing wildlife from important habitat areas. It should also avoid displacing recreation uses. We have a couple of specific comments for proposed alignment. With respect to Tule Springs Fossil Bed National Monument, TNC supports an alternative that would avoid constructing additional infrastructure through or in the Tule Springs Fossil Beds National Monument. With respect to the Oasis Valley, we recognize this is a challenging area given the proximity to Death Valley National Park, the Nevada Test and Training Range, and the town of Beatty. TNC has analyzed possible alignments in this area and suggests an alignment that has the least potential for additional habitat fragmentation. Oasis Valley is known to be at the northern range of the desert tortoise habitat. As temperatures warm in the southwest, this area will increasingly be an important refuge for the tortoise, and it is crucial to their survival. Hence, in citing new linear disturbances, it's important to co-locate linear disturbances to avoid fragmentation of their future habitat. We recognize the importance of GreenLink West project as the backbone of a decarbonized energy sector. Responding to climate change should balance clean energy with the need to protect the state's important biodiversity and arid landscapes. We look forward to continuing the work with the BLM in pursuit of smart from the start principles and an EIS that fully describes the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts of the GreenLink West project. Thank you.
The next speaker is Colleen Beck. Okay. Yes. Do you want me to answer?
Well, yeah, sorry, I missed the question. I couldn't hear it all the way over here.
She's asking about the boards in the back are just kind of a much larger version than the small boards up here, so you can see a better sense of where the proposed action is going. And there is that is the center line, and there is a 10 miles on either side. And that's for us to do our environmental studies and our environmental justice and socioeconomic. We're looking at a much broader area for the cultural resource investigations and biological. They're in a very much smaller area of potential effect. So the 10-mile is both a socioeconomic and a visual corridor that we're looking at.
So it's US 95, at least in the southern part, is that what you're looking at 10 miles on?
No, it's the proposed action. It's the transmission line itself. It's the center line of the 10 miles on either side.
I cannot hear that.
she wants to echo John Hyatt's comment.
I too am concerned about I-11. It would seem to me that you would want to avoid being right next to the highway. Most of what I've read on I-11 is that you want to widen it. So, I think that's a valid question about looking at I-11. The other thing, I'm an archaeologist, and there's a large National Register site in the Mercury Valley that I know that the last power line that went around it, and so I have concerns about it going right along the road.
Yeah, and that's why I have my archaeologist expert. As far as archaeology, we personally Google it, and we have certain procedures that we do, but Ted would be glad to speak to you about any of that. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comment.
The next speaker is John Hiatt. Give me a second, last name.
Did we wipe down the podium? Okay.
My name is John Hiatt, John-Hiatt. I've been informed that this EIS will only look at this transmission line corridor itself and not look at any of the connected actions of some over 200 square miles of potential solar farms. It's my understanding that NEPA requires that you look at connected actions as well as the principal action. And I think in this case, any court would ask, what would a reasonable person say when looking at 200 and some square miles of proposed solar farms that would hook into this? Is that a connected action? And clearly it is. And if you don't pay attention to that, you'll be subject to lawsuits. And that'll tie you up in time and cost money. So I would strongly suggest that you expand your EIS to actually look at the impact of all of those solar farms for which the BLM has received applications. I think that's critical to do that. I would also like to suggest that you coordinate with the state's climate action plan, which basically calls for phasing out natural gas in this state by 2040. Shows, when I see here, hooking into natural gas plants at Apex, if they're going away in less than 20 years, that doesn't make a lot of sense to hook up and you're not gonna be done with this until 2026 at least. That's not very many years to basically make use of that. So I think that everything that could possibly impact that and impact this project needs to be included in EIS. So that's Interstate 11, which the state's been talking about for years, and they've actually laid out essentially a corridor between Las Vegas and Reno. They could have gone up Highway 93, they elected 95 to do that. So the EIS needs to address I-11. It also needs to address the state's climate action plan and how this plays into that. And it needs to include all the connected actions. And you've got a lot of them here with regard to all of these solar plants. If it was just a simple power line from Reno to Las Vegas, it'd be a DC line because it's 460 miles and DC is a lot more efficient to transmit long distance. And the penalty for reforming that, transforming that back into AC is easily taken care of when you've got a line more than 400 miles long. So clearly, this line's being designed for lots of interconnections and both take-ons and take-offs. So all of that stuff needs to be included in the EIS, or else you haven't really done your job on that, and you'll be subject to failure in the courts when you're sued over that stuff. So I would suggest, if you want to go fast on this project, go slow, do the job right. Thank you.
Woo!
I have one more speaker card. If there's anyone else who would like to speak, if you raise your hand, we'll come to you. The last person who signed up is Lisa Ortega.
Lisa Ortega. gonna say anything that you haven't already heard, and I'm certainly not a scientist or an expert. I'm a tree planter. I'm from Nevada, and I'm a Mojave Desert lover. I'm not sure which group I'm most worried about. Losi, Tule Springs fossil beds, Beatty, Scotty's Junction, Walker River, Carson River. And it's not just the line, it's everything that's associated with it. Say goodbye to Sarcobeta's Flat. And that's not all, that's just one. Where will the antelope migrate? Where will the Joshua migrate? If we can even in one lifetime think of Joshua trees migrating and creosote migrating. It's already migrated north 3 deserts. Where will it go? It's so hot and so dry, and this is gonna create so much more dust. You know, we get the dust warnings now, that's new. And it's bladed, it's all bladed just like development. It should be counted as development. 203 miles squared should be taken from our parking lots and our large industrial buildings. I'm asking you to ask NV Energy to do that. It's already out there, ready to go. Wouldn't you love to park under shade? That's the only way we're gonna get it. A 6x6 diamond will never get it in this town. With dust storms increasing, habitat destruction increasing, BLM must work to find already destroyed areas of Nevada to place the solar and have NV Energy do their job on rooftop and parking lot solar. We are waiting. This area is crucial to tortoise survival. This is it. This is where they're at. This is what's left. And our survival. When we allow the blading of so many acres of Mojave habitat. Thank you.
Woo!
So like Diane said, that was the last comment card that we had. If anybody else would like to comment, now's the time. Hi, Jim.
Why do you go so far west of Tonopah? Wouldn't you want to go near Crescent Dunes so that could be tied into NV Energy's?
Well, it's already tied into Nevada Energy through a transmission line there. So in order to get to Tonopah, there would be a big horseshoe coming around back to the other point. There's already transmission lines that come up through there. So we would be following existing transmission lines instead of creating new transmission lines and then bifurcating basically a whole entire biological area. So we're following the wet corridor and existing transmission instead of going directly through Tonopah. But Crescent Dunes is plugged into the Nevada Energy System. Customary 5 seconds for anybody who would like to make another comment. Okay, we're here till 7. It's 6:32, so that's 28 minutes while we're here. We welcome anybody who might have a question or would like to talk to us, not in front of everybody else. If you'd just like to talk to us, we're available, or you can talk to the court reporter. There's chairs up here. They're very comfortable. I sat in one. Oh, Jane?
I just have a question about the poster boards. Do you have a corresponding PowerPoint presentation that's going to be posted?
We do. About a week after scoping, we'll have all this on our website.
Okay.
So we did have one ready, but the school forgot to give us a microphone and a projector. Otherwise, this all wouldn't have been here. We would have been